All right, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's MicroEdge Talks Technology webinar. My name is Maria Fiore. I'm the Director of Operations for MicroEdge, and I'm joined by Sergio Lima, Director of Customer Success at MicroEdge. Welcome, Sergio.
Hello, Maria. Hello, everyone.
In our last webinar, we talked about left-of-boom cybersecurity measures that identify, protect, and detect cyber incidents. Today, our focus is going to be on the right-of-boom, or response and recovery from a cyber incident. Before we begin, here's a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, as you probably noticed, all attendees are on mute to reduce the background noise. We encourage everyone to ask questions throughout the presentation by using the questions panel on the webinar tool. The webinar is being recorded. The link to the recording will be sent to everyone a little later today. In the same email, you will receive a link to download the ebook we're making available. And we encourage you to take advantage of these resources and share the links with colleagues that may benefit from today's information. Lastly, at the end of the webinar, you will receive a short 3-question survey to gather your feedback. Please take a moment to share your feedbacks with us so we can improve the future webinars. So before I hand it over to Sergio, I'm going to take a moment to give a brief overview of who we are for those of you who may not know us. So MicroEdge is a Canadian technology service provider with 40 locations across Canada. We've been providing IT services and solutions to our clients for close to 45 years. Yeah, I was missing 20 there. We strongly believe in creating a partnership with our clients to help them achieve their objectives. For the partnership to be successful, we need to understand your organization. We need to understand your operations, your clients, your people, your challenges, your opportunities, your success metrics. And understanding all of these things helps us recommend and provide the IT services and solutions that fit your needs. In a nutshell, this is who we are and how we engage with our clients. And so with that, Sergio, pass the baton to you.
Thank you, Maria. Welcome, everyone. Hope you listened to our previous one, which was designated left of boom. Everything you need to do to prepare to avoid a boom or an action recovery from some kind of a cyber attack. Today, we'll talk about right of boom. What happens if you do get hit? And are you prepared, right? Obviously, what everybody preaches is the ability to have an incident response plan. A business continuity planning, what can you do to put in place during that incident to continue your business, or how fast can you get back up? And some of the automation you can put in place to lower your risk, lower your vulnerability, make it easier for the teams, your team or your teams to not have to get engulfed in the chaos when an incident does happen. A bulk of our conversation is really going to be on the planning, or the how prepared are you with an incident response plan. Like, what do you need to create an incident response plan? Who are the people, systems? How are you going to document this? All of that is what we're going to talk about. But around all three of those is your organization. It's more the government and the compliancy, right? So it provides a structure and accountability and oversight when something unexpected hits. In a crisis coordination, obviously, you need to have somebody who's managing all of this. You can't have multiple people doing things without communicating with each other. The coordination of that crisis or incident, there needs to be clear roles, reporting lines, decision making in real time. Certain people have to be aware, they have to be spoken to, communicated. Other people have specific roles to do a certain task and then come back to other people and report on what their findings are, etc. You may have something with regards to your industry regulations, contractual with customers. It could be your industry on stuff that maybe you're non-compliant if you do get hit with some kind of an incident. And then communication oversight, that's really important. The communication aspect of that is, how are you managing your internal and external messaging? Make sure that it's clear, clarity and control. Obviously, you don't want to give the impression that you're in total chaos, even though you may be in total chaos. You just don't want everybody else involved in your chaos, and you don't want them worrying about what's going on and whether or not it affects them.
But with all this planning, that's the chaos is controlled chaos.
It becomes controlled, yeah. And in your governance and compliancy, obviously there needs to be some aspect of cyber insurance readiness. There's a lot of companies, a lot of insurers that either enforce this or oblige you to have some kind of a incident response plan in place, or tell you need to get this done within X amount of time for you to be, covered under their contract or their plan. So this is something you need to look at if you're looking for cyber insurance. And operational alignment, obviously, to link cybersecurity response to the business continuity and the risk. You need to identify what's at risk, your systems that are at risk, and what you're doing to recover from all or some systems that are not operational. So the underlying message is the strong governance equals operational clarity, compliance under pressure, and long-term cyber resilience. Good message. What do you think? So
Agreed.
Yeah. So let's start with the planning. Well, it provides, obviously, an incident response plan provides a structure. It provides a document, a Bible, whatever you want to call it, that has a repeatable process. It has steps. It has roles. Certain people, clearly defined roles with responsibilities. Who does what when, in the event of this incident. It documents a lot of the security solutions you may have in place, so it actually gives as much information as possible to the people that are trying to help out. So in the case of if you don't have any technical people on staff and relying on a managed service provider, an incident response plan is important documentation and information that an MSP will need to understand what's in your environment and be able to help you as quickly as possible. It maps out specific steps to contain the damage. And here we're talking about 4 specific areas where you're looking at detection, containment, the restoration process, recovery mode, and the analysis post incident. What happened, what went wrong, can we correct certain things? And around all 4 of those 4 points is the communication. The communication cannot happen on the second or third or fourth point. It needs to happen all across all 4 of them, because everybody needs to be made aware of where are we with this incident right now. This person's working on that task, this person is waiting, this other person is documenting, and someone is in charge of a communication plan or a strategy that says, okay, what does it affect? It affects our systems. Does it affect our customers? Does it affect our partners? This is the strategy we need to put forth. This is what we need to publish to advise certain entities and external parties, et cetera. So all of that combined, it accelerates the response, minimizes the impact, and obviously it supports resiliency. So strong plans turns chaos into coordinated action or a controlled chaos. Excuse me. So there's a prep phase. What do you do with, how do you prepare for an incident response plan? How do you prepare your plan itself? Not the incident, but you got to have a plan first, hopefully, before the incident actually happens. So there's develop and update the incident response plan. So you have an incident response plan. You have to outline how the organization will detect, respond to, and recover from incidences. So clearly define what systems you have in place that are monitoring and detecting, who's getting these alerts, who is responding to them. You have to at least have, what do I have in place right now? That's your, I guess it's like network documentation, or it's pretty straightforward. What do I have set here? And because that defines your, I guess your security posture and where you may be in creating this response plan. You may end up noticing that you're probably missing certain aspects of your IT and your security side that you may have to address. So that helps a lot. Defining clear rules and procedures to guide secure behavior across all your organization. So obviously, if I can use the example of second and third point, train your employees regularly and setting the security policies. We like to, every time we implement a new security solution, whether it's here at MicroAge or with our customers, there needs to be some kind of communication to all those employees or our customers' employees. We've put this security measure in place. It does this, and for reasons like it lowers the risk, etc. It protects you. But in the event of an incident, this is this is what will happen. So you have to have everyone on board in your organization so that they understand that if when something happens like this, um, everybody needs to be talking the same language, obviously. Um, you can't have different entities saying different things. Somebody saying, I think it's a virus, the other one saying, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a virus, and then the other one saying, I don't think he knows what he's doing. You can't have that. So you have to have everybody talking the same language, obviously. You need to pinpoint critical systems, applications, data, potential vulnerabilities, prioritize the protection, and also prioritize what systems need to come back up before others. And I'll talk about that later. But all of that has to be documented in what's my most important business tool that I'm using right now? For example, if email is your important tool or a CRM, then what are the elements involved in that CRM? Well, it's a firewall, it's internet, maybe it's a SaaS product, so I need to make sure that I involve these certain people. I need to have contact with my SaaS provider so that if in case anything happens, I need to have all these people involved. You need to include all of those entities in determining what's your priority or what system is the most important, and that's probably the first one that's going to be back up and running should you get into some kind of an incident. So I talked about the four, right? Let's go through detection. Continuous monitoring, early detection is key to limiting impact, obviously. So the less security tools or solutions you have in place, the harder it is to detect it, to see it, to notice it. And the longer a virus and or cyber criminal will stay in your environment, making it even worse in the long run. So, you may be a small, medium business. You don't have the means to, or maybe you're a smaller business where it's difficult to find IT personnel to specifically do that because you're not sure if they have a full role and then they won't have enough work, whatever the case may be. But you're not forced to hire somebody to do these things. You're not forced to find someone who's eventually going to do a research and look for intrusion detection systems and a SIM and an EDR/XDR/MDR. Talk to your managed services provider. They have the right solutions for you. A lot of these solutions are managed by these entities. So third party will do, an MDR solution and monitor your workstations for vulnerabilities, and will actually have tools that do early detection and containment and quarantine of a specific file with an alerting. So the goal is to avoid being hit, right? To have the right tools in place that help you lower the risk on the amount of infections, or lower the amount of times that you will have to put an incident response plan in place if your tools can help you get that done automatically. So you need to confirm, you have to filter out the false positives, validate the actual threats. These are solutions and services that most managed service providers do, including MicroAge. We do it very well. And then we can analyze the scope and the origin and understand what happened and how far it spread, etc. So, all of that, don't get worried that you have to find somebody in-house to get this done or train somebody that you already have. You can actually speak to managed service provider and they can help you with these solutions. So, obviously, the first portion is the detect. Once it's found, you need to have some kind of documentation that says containment, eradication, what are the steps, what are the tools you're using, prevent the threat from spreading to other parts of the network. So what are the steps? If you've identified that this application is your primary application, what are the steps you need to do to ensure that that works if something gets infected? So if I'm going to use a workstation or a laptop as an example, if your laptop gets infected, what are the necessary steps? If you've already detected that it's there, what are the next steps? Well, you have to document that. You have to say, well, if a laptop is detected and the EDR did not quarantine, that means there's a vulnerability, there's an issue going on there, there's a risk. So the technician needs to do certain tasks. turn off the machines, disconnect it from the network, run certain tools, cut off attacker control, limit further intrusion, etc. All of that needs to be documented, because the last thing you want is, a couple of technicians doing whatever they feel like doing, using whatever tools they want to use, and eventually it just never goes away, and it's just a vicious circle that, somebody will delete it, and then somebody else will turn on the machine, and it's still there, and it'll propagate and continue. You got to have that documented, as well as maintaining critical functions while preparing for full functionality. You have to, find a way to remove all your malware, identify and eliminate the root cause of that incident. It's maybe not coming from a specific machine that you've turned off. It may be coming somewhere else. So you have to have the right people in place and the right tools in place and documented that allow for, when somebody comes in during an incident, they know exactly what has to be done.
It's a procedure, right?
It's a
And
procedure.
you
Yeah,
follow the procedure.
exactly. In recovery mode, obviously, once you've figured out or you've eradicated, you've gotten rid of the virus, the menace, etc., you need to restore from data, obviously, hoping that your data is valid from verified backup. So you need to rebuild your operations from sources that you trust that are not infected. So again, that has to be validated. You may have been infected on one of your systems because of patches not being applied. So if you've recovered that machine back to its functional form, chances are that there's a patch that's missing. So you need to apply the patches, right? Fix the vulnerabilities, test the systems, ensure that it's ready, and then monitor for any lingering, keep a close watch on any anomalies, stuff that's going on post-restoration, and then slowly bring your systems online. You're not obliged to bring all your systems up at once. I don't think it's actually a good method to bring everything back up. You need to bring in a little bit at a time to ensure that it's fully functional. It also helps in case the infection's still there. Let's say you have 5 items to bring up, and on the 4th one something goes wrong. It helps you find the source of what's going on. So it'll help with the gradual bringing back of the systems online, and it ensures, in bringing stuff online gradually. I understand you have to be patient, unfortunately, but you need to maintain the operation during that recovery. So you're trying to have minimal disruptions, but you're trying to also make sure that your business comes back up in a safe way. Now, once you've done that and you've brought your systems back up, what do? Just everything's good, great day, good job. Well, you have to
High
do a
five all around.
yeah, you have to do a post-incident review, obviously. First of all, you need to document the incident. You need to capture the timelines. You need to, whatever actions you took, whatever decisions were taken, and all the communications. You need to understand the root cause. You need to identify the gaps. You may have issues. You may be forced to implement certain things to avoid this happening in the future. What went wrong, right? Why did it happen? Where are my improvements? And then obviously you need to update your response plans. You may have to update your tools. You may have to train your employees. You got to use that to your advantage so you can be better, better protected and avoid this happening again. And review your lessons learned. Obviously, if something went wrong or there was something missing or the process didn't go as you planned, you may have to revise that and obviously advise all the stakeholders so that they know that you've changed certain procedures in there.
But we talk about right and left of boom, right? And it's a military term, and in the military they do after action reviews, right? So when
Yeah,
something happened, they then sit down and debrief and figure out, what could have gone better, what did
yeah,
go well, what didn't go well. Same thing here, right?
yep, exactly.
But you have to
So
document the steps to that, like who's in the
yeah,
meetings, who's supposed to give you the logs, who's supposed to, all these things have to
that's
be
right.
identified and documented.
Exactly. Everyone that was involved during that incident needs to also be involved in that post-incident, obviously, to provide all that information. And around all of those 4 pillars is really the communication. It's the most important aspect of it, really. Um, you can't wait too long for certain communications. Obviously, um, people need to be made aware whether you like it or not. You're going through an incident. Actions have to be taken. It'll affect some employees. It may affect your customers, your partners, third parties, etc. So you have to ensure that that communication flows through at every level. And you need to document how you're communicating and what you're communicating for. And I'll explain in the next few slides. First of all, the internal communication, right? Assign your clear roles for communication, because you don't want all your employees sending a bunch of emails and calling your customers and partners, saying who knows what with regards to what just happened. So there's misinterpretation, there's not getting all the information. It's very important that your internal communication starts first, so that everyone within your organization is aware of exactly what's going on. Obviously, you need to assign key roles. So as an example, I would not necessarily involve my entire sales team in giving them information on what's going on, but I'd rather give my director of sales that information, and that person in turn can advise the team members, etc. So you need to assign roles for an incident manager, who is actually the person who is in charge of this entire incident response plan, right? The go-to person doesn't necessarily have to be a president or an owner, but it's someone who is in charge of that entire process, who will give the pertinent information to the president or to other parties. Your technical lead. There may be multiple people that you can use, but you need to have one person who's in charge of all of that, and that person needs to assign tasks to their respective technical people, and not an incident manager giving it to one specific technician. It needs to flow. It's got to flow through the right process for it to work well. You may have implications with HR. If your systems are down, it involves employees that are not working, and it may or may not affect certain HR related issues. You may or may not have a communications advisor. You may or may not have a documenter. You may or may not have a data analyst. But the important thing is you can assign multiple roles to one person if they're okay with it, or you can just include it in external experts, right? So the specialists that may support your team, like MicroH, we're involved in a lot of our customers' incident response plan because we are the technical lead, right? Or we are the technical, sometimes we're the incident manager, sometimes we're just a technical lead, sometimes we're a documenter, and sometimes we're an analyst. So it depends on, where you want us to be. We can be there for you. But it needs to be documented. Again, if my role is to just document, I can't, show up and tell the technical person, did you try this and did you test that? I shouldn't be doing that, right? There should be somebody else. So don't be afraid to use your existing service provider to help you with that. And if you're assigning internal roles or external, well, usually managed service providers have their own backups of resources, but if you're assigning roles to key personnel of your organization, just make sure there's a backup in case they're on vacation or not available. You have to always make sure that somebody's there in the event of an incident, because an incident's not going to wait. It's not going to wait for all your key personnel to be in-house to happen, right? Usually happens when no one's available. Yeah.
Can you say holidays?
Yeah, and weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your communication channels. Obviously, you need to figure out. It needs to be in real time. So there's got to be a way for you to be able to communicate to all of these key roles, key personnel, in a safe way. And we say that because if you get hit with an incident that affects your emails, that affects your IP telephony solution, chances are you won't be able to reach them through the usual channels. So you have to document that. We talk about it later, but you have to be able to have a way to communicate with all of those key roles in a way that is outside or non-dependent on the systems that could potentially be
Well, because
compromised.
sometimes you've got to do a little bit of investigation, and you may not know that certain systems have been affected until it's too late. So you have to have that way of communicating, and especially,
Yeah.
you know, if you're communicating and you're saying, okay, you know, we're going to use this server or this cloud solution or application, and the cyber criminals are sitting there watching this, they can go and hit those as well, right? So you
Yeah.
got to be careful.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, there's you have to also look at your business, right? You may have a business where you're supplying cell phones to certain employees and others have their personal. Um, you know, you'd have to look at how you can communicate with certain people. You have to look at the systems you have in place. You have to, you know, not rely on, let's say, email as an example of someone sending, hey, I think I got a spam. Can you check this out? You know what? Maybe you're infected, and maybe that person's not even getting your email. So you have to hope, you know, hope that doesn't happen, but you have to prepare for the worst case, I guess, and have a way of communicating internally, anyways. Um, Message templates, pre-approved templates. I like this. We do it often internally and with our customers. For example, an employee receives, on the rare occasion, you have an anti-spam solution, but it may happen that a spam goes through. An employee detects it and was trained well enough that thinks it's a spam, and then calls their supervisor, calls the tech support, and asks them to take a look at an email. And yes, in fact, they ran through the detect, they ran through the containment and got rid of it. Um, but it's very important to communicate that with the rest of your employees, because that's just one person who called you. There could be 3 others that have received it and didn't have a chance to open it yet, or didn't call you and they may have clicked it. So it's very important to say, you know, hey, everyone, we received this email. If you happen to get this, please delete it or please advise us, whatever your process might be. But it's important to communicate that, you know, you've put in security solutions. This is what it does. Well, hey, we've, you know, potentially had a spam come in. We've potentially, you know, we've isolated something that went wrong on one of the machines. You have to explain clearly. Like it says, ensure templates are clear, reviewed, and ready to deploy. They have to be ready to go, and make sure that it's simple for people to understand with specific instructions. Um, and again, it could cover things like a suspected attack, confirmed incident, containment updates, recovery progress, etc. You know, I guess a recovery progress could be something as simple as we even do it for, you know, a folder that was accidentally deleted by a user. It's like, hey, everyone, we've noticed that this folder is no longer there. You have to choose your words as well, right? You don't want to put somebody under the bus, but there's a folder missing in, you know, on this server. Our teams are working on it to recover that as quickly as possible. We'll give you more information. So it needs to be, you know, again, open communication. You need to advise people so that everybody talks the same language. All right. So notification, I've set clear escalation paths, ensure that the right people are alerted quickly and in the correct order. So again, there may be certain people I want to advise before others. Um, excuse me. Um, you need to make sure that it's documented for when do you communicate with IT people? So technical response and containment. When do I need to call legal? When do I need to call my insurer? Uh, when do I need to advise HR for anything that may or may not affect employee-related impacts, communications, your leadership, right? Your ownership, leadership, strategic decisions. You may have to take a decision on some kind of a tool that needs to be put as quickly as possible, and it obviously requires some kind of financial investment. You need to know, you know, when do you when do you set that communication? So define who triggers those notifications and when they're delivered. Obviously, that all needs to be documented as well. It needs to be part of your detect, you know, eradicate or contain and recover. And it's like, oh, okay, we're trying to recover. I need this tool. Need to make a communication. So we got to communicate with our internal employees or with customers, and then we have to advise executive leadership maybe that we have to invest in some kind of tool. So communication is very important. You can't leave anyone in the dark, specifically your key personnel that are involved in this. And like I said, prepare and document how you will communicate with all of these people in a way that is not dependent on your actual infrastructure. And we had this question in the French webinar, is it okay to use Teams to communicate? It is okay. But unfortunately, Microsoft Teams is part of the suite, which is part of the tenant of Microsoft. And if your tenant gets hacked, your team's not working. So you have to look at alternatives, whether it's a secondary mobile devices, whether it's personal devices, whether it's setting up a go-to webinar, or if you're running Teams, it's a Zoom subscription maybe, with a list already predetermined of people to contact, with possible invitations to personal emails. You have to determine all of that. You have to actually, I guess, assume that your entire network is no longer functioning, and you need to find a way to communicate with all these people at the same time on a real-time basis, and possibly for a long period of time until you're back up and running.
That's that thing they say. It's hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to test and document your fallback procedures, please. It's actually part of our business continuity and disaster recovery testing that we do for our customers. It's not very good if you're not testing it, right? Now, your external communications, eventually, you may or may not have to advise external parties like your customers or partners. Depends on the gravity or how big you got hit. But it does help when it's one single message and it's everyone saying the same thing, and it's maybe coming from one person or one department. Try not to be too technical about it, but a summary template or a summary communication that explains what's going on. Why? Because you don't want different people with different stories. It'll leave you open to, like it says, public perception, legal exposure, a lot of people being confused, more chaos. The goal is to everyone talk the same language, and if you have to communicate that with your external, because that's part of your compliance and regulatory, and obviously, I believe that if you get hit with a cyber attack, you have to report that anyways with the Canadian government. So there's that aspect that has to be communicated as well. Map your audience before the crisis hits. So identify all your external parties who may need to be informed. So clients, for those who are affected maybe by the incident. For example, we provide service, right? If my ticketing system is down, I have to advise my clients that they no longer can place any more tickets with us, and there needs to be a plan B
Or yeah,
while this
the
is going
alternative.
on. Yeah. Vendors, you may have the same thing, right? You're dealing with vendors. There's maybe purchases that have to be done. There's maybe bills that need to pay. Regulatory bodies, legal and compliance requirements. There's partners. There's insurers that you need to call. So you may have a small event. You need to kick in your incident response plan, but it's someone internal that can take care of it. But if it becomes a little too big for you to handle, and now it requires multiple people, and I need to communicate what's the impact, several departments are affected, my clients are affected. Hopefully you have cyber insurance, and you need to call them because they have an entire team dedicated and specialized specifically to do that. So a lot of times they parachute in an incident coordinator, they bring in legal, they bring in an external security firm to start doing forensics and diagnostics. They have the right people, and that's good if you have that part, because that really helps, especially for small businesses that don't have any of those.
And if you have cyber insurance and they're not offering these things, you need to question why.
Good point. Good point. Yeah. A lot of them have, but yeah, I've seen somewhere they don't have that.
Well, then they're not offering real cybersecurity insurance, really.
And maintain your up-to-date stakeholder list. Obviously, if you've changed cyber insurer, make sure you document it in your incident response plan.
I was just going to say, Sergio, when it comes to external communications and all that, I don't know if the people on the call remember the CrowdStrike incident with Microsoft, and it affected, half the planet. So there was a lot of people who were trying to figure out what was going on. But CrowdStrike really did a good job with the external communication in terms of, and it came either from the CEO or the Chief Information and Security Officer. No
Yeah,
other, people were from CrowdStrike were talking about it, but they kept everybody up to date. They were pretty transparent
exactly.
about what was going on, where they were in their process, what happened. There was a bit of and even at that, there was a bit of, Microsoft saying it's not us, it's them. And they
Yeah,
took responsibility and said, yep, it's us. It's one of, we did something, a process that went wrong. We're, on it. We're working with Microsoft to get everybody back up. And you know what? They didn't lose a lot of customers. They handled the communication really well so that most customers stuck with them, right?
yeah, yeah. We actually, that was good. It's a good example because we had a couple customers that had CrowdStrike, and we saw the alerts coming in, and we had to be part of their incident response plan because we're supporting them, right? So we had to be
Right.
involved in potentially rebuilding certain machines. There was a certain process that had to be done. We had to follow this procedure in rebuilding some of the machines. So that was fun. Not really, but it was
Yeah.
fun.
And
But
I
yeah,
was just going to say,
we
for
were
those who
involved in.
don't know, though, CrowdStrike is a security offering, but for pretty large enterprise type customers. And we don't see them very much in the small and
Yeah.
medium space, but in the larger space, they're big.
So we were involved in the communication and the detection. Well, not much of the detection because we knew the machines that were going wrong. They were just crashing, literally just crashing.
Right.
But yeah, we had the right procedures in place. It was just a manual thing that had to be done. So, you know, we had our roles. We did what we had to do, and we were reporting back to our customer, certain people, to say this is where we're at, this is what's going on, and they handled the communication on their side with their employees and with their customers and their partners. But yeah, it's very important to have that communication. And obviously, Maria, you were talking about this. This is the public relations strategy, right? What they used as a strategy and how it worked. The message was clear. It had a resolution. It had an action plan with a resolution and a process to how to get this fixed. It needs to be consistent. So, like you said, it came from only certain people or certain entities from CrowdStrike, and not from 3,000 employees that work at CrowdStrike, but it came
Yeah.
from a specific person. But the message was consistent across the board. We kept the same message consistent as whatever they were saying. We were saying the same message. We were informed, and obviously it reassured our customers and users that we knew what we were doing. We have the right tools. We know exactly what has to be done, and this is how we're going to do it. Well, I was trying to
But
avoid that. Go ahead.
they planned for it, right? It was and that's why we talk about plans, right?
Yeah,
It was
that's right.
planned, and I'm sure they looked at it and they found areas where they could have improved and make things better, but they stuck to the plan and
Yeah.
it worked through. They worked it through, right?
I'm pretty
So
sure they did their post-incident and corrected certain things for sure. Yeah.
100%, right?
Yeah. So, you have to avoid in communicating on the outside, you need to avoid just communicate verified facts. Don't speculate. Don't say, hey, just to let you know, Mr. Customer, customers,
We
we
think.
think we have a virus. It's down. We're not sure yet. You can't do that. And you need to communicate at the right time. You can't think you have something. You need to know, because that'll create disaster and more chaos and more pressure, because then everyone's just going to call along with the boss on top of the technician who's trying to fix this. You have several tens of hundreds of customers that are also waiting for you to get this fixed. So that doesn't help. You may have to involve legal, because maybe there's a reputational risk, or the compliance teams, etc. And try and balance transparency with the business protection. Obviously, obviously you have to be clear, and I'm not saying you should be lying, but you need to be clear in what was discovered. So being from a technical background, I can say without insulting any of my technical colleagues, is that the technicians typically we don't like documentation. It's not a priority on the list of things to do when we're implementing solutions.
You
So
guys
I think,
fix things. That's what you do.
yeah. So we like to implement. new stuff, new gadgets, new solutions. We like to test them. We like to resolve issues. Cool. But you have to document that, especially when it's a cybersecurity incident, especially when you have an incident response plan, because you need to know what happened. You need to know who was involved. You need to know what actions occurred, who did it, what are the logs, who did you communicate this to, what was the data you collected, and all the decisions that were made. All of that needs to be collected. Why? Number one, you need to correct any anomalies or any issues that you may have countered. You may have certain aspects of your environment that are missing cybersecurity solutions in place, let's say. You may have someone who is not the right person who was managing that solution. Um, you you definitely need it for your cyber insurance, because they will be asking you for audit logs, and they'll ask you for exactly what happened throughout this entire incident from A to Z, and what you're doing to correct it and to avoid it happening in the future. And that, if you don't have any of that and you're not documenting, so again, assign someone who is in charge of documenting this whole process. So while that technician's doing something, just make sure that that technician provides the information to whoever's documenting that, so you can, again, strengthen your response, and it promotes resiliency within your environment. It lessens your risk and your vulnerabilities, and allows you to come back from an event, a future event. Cross your fingers. It allows you to come back faster because now you're better prepared. Now, the business continuity planning is something you should be looking at. Um, Hopefully not after an incident happens, but you should be planning this before. Um, you need to plan what would happen if my main application, so I'll use my ticketing system as an example, right? So all of our customers call us, we need to open up tickets. They place tickets. So if they call and we can't open up tickets, I can't track anything. It affects them, it affects us, obviously. What's my backup plan? Like, have I tested anything else? Do I have anything else to revert to? Um, and not necessarily a secondary solution, but if you have one system hosting your ticketing, as an example, or your database or your CRM, um, do you have anything to revert to as a plan B in case this goes down while your incident response team is trying to fix it? You may be down for hours, days, and even weeks. What can I do to continue business? What do I have in place that allows me to, at a minimum level, have some kind of functioning business, so that I'm not completely paralyzed?
Yeah, and
Um,
that's where the identification of, your main systems, the applications prioritizing, is it your finance systems? Is it your manufacturing systems? What systems, keep your business going and need to come up quickly? And then figure out, okay, maybe I need a plan B for this. If CRM is nice and good to have, and your salespeople can still call their clients because they have,
yep,
phone numbers somewhere else or
there
something
you
like
go.
that, that's
Yep,
great. Then that's fine. Then that one maybe can wait. But your payroll system or your payment system needs to be up, so that goes first, right? That and,
exactly.
and there's a backup for that.
Yeah. So
So it
thanks for
doesn't
the
have to
segue,
be
because
every
that's the
system.
next slide, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's exactly that. Identify your threats. I mean, obviously, look at use a risk-based approach. So, what what system or application or what part of my business is the most important part of my business? I can't afford to be down at all, or I can be down certain time. uh, that will be your priority, right? So in the event of a cyber incident, you need to focus on that first and make sure that's up and running, and then go through the next priorities, etc. But not only that, you also need to, if you don't have this internally, we'll speak to your managed service provider. They can give you an assessment and a security posture. They'll go through an assessment and an evaluation of your environment and say, okay, you're good at points 1 and 2, points 3, you know what, it's questionable, and points 4 and 5, you don't even have this in place, so you're at risk. And look at that, and strive to implement those minimum requirements, so that the likelihood and of you getting hit again is lessens, right? um, so understand that if you have Like I said, a SaaS application or your CRM or your database is in-house and it's tied to your another server, and then it's tied to internet being up and running all the time, and it's tied to a firewall. Well, all of those systems are now priority one to be up and running. So you have to look at that as well. And that's why we say it's a risk-based approach and not a device-based or application-based. You can't just say, well, my ticketing server is very important, but your ticketing server is needs internet access. It needs maybe your telephony system because your solution has customers calling on the phone, which also opens up tickets. So you may have other systems that are tied into that, and now your one little server becomes, a whole environment that becomes priority one. I hope I described that properly without being too technical.
Did a good job.
And the data backup and recovery is always important. It's many, many years that we talk about this concept. I'll reiterate it again: 3, 2, 1, 1, 0 backup rule. 3 copies of your data. 2 of them need to be on separate media, like external drive or cloud-based. One of them needs to be outside of your environment, so off-site somehow, whether it's replicated or into the cloud. The other one is an immutable copy, so a copy that is offline or completely disconnected from your network. Why? Because hackers will get in, and the first thing they do is go to your backup solution and completely scrap everything, stop the sessions, possibly delete your data or grab your data. And if you have those copies, they'll get into it all the way, except your offline backup or your immutable backup, because it's not completely connected to your network at all times. So that may be your only way or your only data you have left if something were to happen. And the 0 part of that 3-2-1-1-0 strategy is 0 errors when performing backup restores and recoveries. So again, you need to test your backups. Make sure that they work, make sure that it takes, part of your business continuity and your disaster recovery is testing to see how long it takes to restore your data, because you may have your data, but it may take you 3 days to restore it. You need to look at that. That may be unacceptable, right? So you need to find a better way to get your data restored. And again, the goal is to have, faster recovery, minimal disruption. Confidence in your backups obviously limits your downtime and your impact. Plan for alternate work sites. If you're in that situation, you may need to send people home. Maybe your primary systems are compromised. You may need to send people either remote, at home, but ensure that they still have VPNs, ensure that they have multi-factor authentication. If they're running to cloud application, there's cloud platforms, make sure that they're protected. If they're using personal machines, if that's part of your strategy, you need to document it, and you may have to install some of the tools you have in your business on that personal machine, because it is going to be your plan B, I guess, for business continuity. But you can't have your users going to coffee shop and clicking on the Wi-Fi and not having any of those of your business tools in place, because that'll just make it worse for you. So unfortunately, you have to revert to personal machines and cell phones, and maybe working with other devices that you're not in control of, but you need to find a way to secure them. Protect your sensitive data, obviously, so apply strong access controls and encryption. Know when to switch your people over. Again, it's defined by the priority or the how severe and how important that system is to you. You may have 15 people working on an application, but in the event of a disaster, you're okay with 3 or 4, then that's what you need to focus on. Make sure that those 3 or 4 are the key personnel that to continue your business at a minimized, in a minimized fashion, unfortunately, but at least your business still continues. And run the drills. Run regular drills, tabletop exercises. Make sure that the roles you've put in place. Make sure everybody knows their role, but make sure that everybody is aware of what has to be done. In running these tests, you'll encounter gaps. Maybe you may have to adjust your procedures. you may have to put corrective measures in place. That's the whole goal of running these tests, right? To make sure that you're prepared so that there's no that oh crap moment where we didn't think about that. You have to test it, and in testing it, you'll realize that you may have skipped a step or two, and you can correct that before you're actually in an incident. Oh, I'm sorry, I pressed too fast. And treat your plans as living strategies, not static. So make sure that they're always updated on a regular basis. So if you do change some kind of security tool in place or change a process, make sure that everybody's aware and make sure it's documented. Now, automation is always good. It helps mostly on the detection side. As an example, if you have traditional antivirus, it may detect it but not help quarantine or remove it. If you have, endpoint detection and response, or some kind of a managed endpoint detection and response, or XDR as they call it, that means you have an outside firm or an outside entity that is monitoring, let's say, your devices. The tool itself will detect an anomaly, something going wrong. It'll automate things like quarantining the file, removing it. If it can't do it, it'll disable, let's say, Wi-Fi or network access. It'll turn off the machine. This is the type of automation that you want in your environment, and not have to rely on someone calling a technician who has to run the diagnostics to get all that done manual. The time it takes to get that done is critical, and it's very hard to recover from that, because chances are it may have propagated across your entire network. So if you have the right tools in place with some form of automation, it supports faster detection, analysis, and the response. Pretty much all it does is it sends alerts saying, hey, we detected something, this is what was done, no action needs to be taken, or hey, I need your help, something has to be done. But there's at least, I can't say someone, but there's an entity there, there's some kind of automation that is helping you with that. And again, don't be afraid to talk to your managed service provider. They have the right tools and solutions for you. And it frees up your analysts for high value tasks. Obviously, it lets for us anyways, it frees up our techs to do the right stuff and not have to worry about the antivirus and the quarantining of a file, because I know my EDR solution did that for me already. I just need to look at the logs and see what my next steps are. And that in turn builds your more agile and resilient security posture. The more stuff you put in place, the better you are on your security posture. So in summary, it's all about resiliency, right? The right plan, any organization could recover and come back stronger. Cyber threats, it's not if, it's when. It's your response that defines the resilience. You don't need a large SOC. You actually don't need a SOC at all. Just speak to your managed service provider. They can provide the right services to help you with that. If you're not an IT business, why would you hire a bunch of IT people? Let the IT specialists take care of it. And strategy is greater than size, I guess. Maria, is that it?
Yeah, I think that's what it says.
A strong plan, clear roles, secure communication. Coordination is very important. Communication is very important. Not too complex. Automation as much as possible. Again, maybe not for you internally, but if you're dealing with a managed service provider, there's a lot of automation and security that can help with that. Documentation, very important. And resilience, it just turns chaos into something that's manageable. That chaos is there. It's just controllable. It's easier to handle. You can get it done the right way. Unfortunately, it's a lot of you may have to go through this, but if you're prepared for it, it's at the end of it all, you may think, oh my God, this was insane. And then you speak to us and it's like, no, that was a walk in the park. Because if you want insane, here's an example of certain customers we've gone through where they didn't have the plan, they didn't have the people, 5 people were making the decisions. I had a sales director who wanted the systems up now before the database guy and the financial guy needs to pay his bills, and everybody was important and nothing was done for days. So you need that plan. Otherwise it doesn't get done. And that goes to that free ebook that has all of this information.
Yeah, so thank you, Sergio, for taking us through that. And if I can get to the right thing that I was looking at. Yep. So yeah, thanks Sergio, and thanks everyone for joining us. We encourage you to download the ebook. I put the link in the chat, so if you wanted to download it now, you can, and reach out to your local microage with any questions about what we talked about today. Um, just a reminder again, if you don't want to download the ebook right away, it's okay. You're going to get an email later on this afternoon with the link to the ebook and the recording so that you can review some of these things as well. And we will be back on September 11th with our next MicroAge Talks Technology webinar, and we're super excited about that. And yes, if you have any questions, please put them on the questions panel. We do have a couple minutes left. So we are super excited about the next one, because today we did, we talked about incident response and plans, and it was pretty high level, almost theoretical, I'm going to call it.
Yep.
But our next one is going to be a live tabletop exercise. We're going to have a scenario about, an incident that happened, and then run through, different things that need to happen to respond to that incident. And it'll be very interactive with the audience. And yeah, we're looking forward to doing this. It's going to be a lot of fun. So look for the invites in your emails on our social media. They're probably going to come out somewhere in August. And this one you probably want to attend live. We will be recording it, but I don't think the recording is going to do it justice. I think being there live and just getting that feeling and experiencing what a real incident would look like, and then an incident response, and what you should be doing and what you should be thinking about, and what if you don't have an immutable backup, and things like that, questions that'll come up, and we're going to try to make it really interesting for you.
We'll throw some
Um,
curveballs just to make it
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, inject some curveballs. So with that, Sergio, thank you very much. As
Thank you.
always, a pleasure. And
Thank you,
thanks
everyone.
to all of, yeah, thank you to all of you for spending time with us today. And we wish everyone a great summer, and we will see you again in September. So thank you.
Thanks.